wanted to share a little bit about how I go about the seeding. This is applicable to a lot of different kinds of nursery crops. Most trees I would like to do this way if possible. So it starts with bed prep, and when I say most trees, I mean I can grow nuts in here because there are cats around. And sometimes a squirrel will get in and get some, but Misha is a killer, and she doesn't let it go on for too long. And there's just two cats right now prowling around a pretty large area. So I think if one were to have 2 or 3 cats around, you could basically grow anything in the ground. And yes, there are ecological consequences to having cats. You can put a little bell on them to prevent them from eating songbirds and other things like that. But they're indispensable partners in my nursery anyway. And I love Misha. Anyway, I can do this with nuts. I can do it with many kinds of fruit tree seeds. Right now I'm doing it with pawpaw. And what happened here is I had garlic and elephant garlic in this bed, and Carpathian walnuts. So they got dug out, and digging trees out can be actually compacting depending on how you do it. Sometimes you step on the bed here and there and whatever. And so after I dig the trees out, I go through and broad fork it. And this bed has been broad forked down to 16 inches with the meadow creature, which is the greatest broad fork of all time. And so it's loose, and then I rake the top. And what that allows me to do is to throw a line of seeds in and then cover it with soil from the next line over. So the motion is always so important, efficiency of motion. So what I do is, here I've got pawpaw seed, and often what I like to do is take rotten fruit from good varieties and just throw the rotten fruit in sawdust. And you have to get a good ratio, good mixture. But what ends up happening is that the fruit breaks down over winter, and then in the spring, some dried ones, I don't want those. In the spring, you can mix it up like this, and if you mix for a few minutes, you end up with the sawdust being sort of like a inert carrier. And I mean, mind you, this is just straight up pawpaw fruit thrown in here. Some of them rotted, not 100% all the way. Most of them are just basically gone and turned into mulch now. So what ends up happening after I mix this for a few minutes is you get a seed mix, and there's a certain amount of pawpaw seeds in here and a certain amount of sawdust and other stuff. Still a lot of nutrition. Pawpaws and most fruit have a lot of carbohydrates in them, so this is actually super nutrient value for the soil. And what ends up happening now is you have to feel it out and, you know, how many seeds you want in a row. But now I'll take this handful, sprinkle it in here. Maybe that's a little bit light, so maybe, well, if I don't have the phone, I would do both of my hands together. And when I don't have the phone, I take both hands, grab up a handful, throw it in the trench, my hand's out here, and then on the return trip, I cover it with the soil like this. And then I'm ready for another handful, shake, and on the return trip, cover. So you kind of, you know, you're not really like calibrating in a scientific way or anything like that, but you're getting a feel for, okay, I'm putting maybe 10 seeds in this row or something like that. And then I can space it more or less how I want. But that way, the flow of motion is I'm backing up, the tray's over here, and I'm moving down the bed this way. I back up, grab the tray, the box, and then distribute, and cover. And the reason it's so fast is because this soil had been broad forked and then raked, so it's so loose. I mean, literally just like that. You know, that's not normal. If you had compacted soil, this would take 20 times as long to finish the bed. I mean, I'll be able to plant this huge box of seeds in literally 10 minutes at the spacing I want with almost no wear and tear on my wrists. It's really a joy, actually. It makes seeding super fast and accessible. Or it's not like, it's not scary. Sometimes if the task is gonna take you hours and hours and be a struggle, it's like not fun. You're not having fun, but this is fun. So anyway, those are some of the tricks that I learned over the years, and that's how I seed huge boxes of tree seeds in a few minutes. So this section of bed probably took about 15 minutes to broad fork, 5 minutes to rake, and 12 minutes to seed. And that is a lot of bed. That's a lot of seeds because they're planted pretty densely. And then what I really like to try to make sure to do is mulch it right now. Every once in a while, I'll do this and then I'll mulch it the next day or something like that. These I seeded yesterday for 2 days ago, and now I'm gonna go mulch it today. This is what's already happened. We had some dry weather. That'll come back once it's covered with the mulch. But that clod was this clod just 2 days ago. Beautiful, nice soil. If we can keep all that moisture in the soil by covering it with wood chips, even, we're gonna get pounded with 85 degrees for the next couple days here in April. And so I wanna cover this up right away. I wanna get this all covered. That's a good workflow, is just try to do a little bit less seeding if it means that you won't, if you won't be able to cover it and mulch it, then just dial back the amount of soil disturbance you're doing so that you can do the whole treatment. Because the other thing is, if you get the mulch on right away, even fewer weeds germinate. And now in multiple years in here where I don't let weeds go to seed, there's really nothing to do. After I mulch it, maybe I come through and spot handweed once or twice through the season, but if you keep on it, you don't really have much weeding to do. Seeding is fast, broad forking is fast, harvesting is fast, and the growth is phenomenal. So it's not no-till because harvesting is tillage, but it's really minimal inversion, no inversion really, and I think it's probably more soil building than no-till in some ways. Also, I'm adding in a preposterous amount of wood chips every single year, so that helps with the soil organic matter. Anyway, oh, and one other thing specifically about pawpaws is that I have moved to doing 2 years in ground. So what I just seeded will be in the ground for 2 growing seasons. Here is last year. So those handfuls of like seed that I was just throwing in, this is what it comes up like, little forest of pawpaws. And these guys that are, that grow this much in 1 year, they'll be 2.5, 3 foot this year. These little guys, even if they got nipped off at the top or something like that, even if it's just a root fragment, this one you can see actually did get nipped earlier in the season but grew from a side shoot. This one will also be really big. So the second year, they seem to really take off. And I've found, rather than, because they're a fairly slow growing tree in the beginning, rather than trying to really do everything I possibly can to stretch out their growing season and start the seeds in a greenhouse and do everything that I possibly can to get them bigger in 1 year, I'll just eat up another, 20, 30 feet of bed space and have them be a 2-year crop. So it's sort of less stressful. I can plant them when I get to it, and I don't have to worry about like whether I'm gonna have enough ones that are the right size. And unless you're selling like thousands of pawpaws, it is not really that big of a loss of space. Anyway, That's how I do it. So there we have it. Shell bark, Carpathian walnut, persimmons, pawpaws, Saskatoon berries, and peaches, all broad forked, seeded, got a little bit of chicken manure compost, and then heavy mulching. And just never skimp out on the mulching. Like right here, I totally skimped on it. I'm gonna have to bring back more actually. If you can see any bare soil, you gotta cover that up. At this time of year, everything should look like that. Just no bare soil, completely covered with mulch. And I'm not even talking about like for the soil health and all of that goodness. I'm just talking about you don't have time to not mulch, because if you don't mulch that heavily, you're gonna have to weed, you're gonna have to do all this other stuff, or you just will have bad crops. If you mulch it like this, that's almost it for the season, maybe 1 or 2 touch-ups here and there. I mean, it's to the point, it's so effective that if mulching were not good for the soil, or if it were bad for the soil, I would probably still do it to a certain extent. And who knows, that could be true. It may not be the best thing for the soil. In the big picture, all this mulch came from places where trees were getting cut down, and what happened to the soil there? I mean, it's good for the soil here, there's no doubt about that. But on the big picture, you know, it's a fossil fuel. It's the fossil fuel created all of this, wood chippers and chainsaws and whatnot. And but it's here, and it is a phenomenal source of nutrients, weed suppression, soil moisture retention, everything. Anyway, not to get too philosophical and negative on it, I love mulching. It's the best, but it comes from somewhere. So if you put that much on at this time of year, that's almost all you have to do between now and harvest. Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not much.